The attacks in Paris last November represent a frightening new phase in terrorism across Europe. The threat is growing, as is the web of globally connected terrorists. That is the view of the director of Europol.
Well, I think Paris showed that ISIS in particular have decided to go global with their strategy, to take on the West using international network of terrorists rather than just so-called lone actors, to therefore plan and to carry out more spectacular style attacks. A picture that I see across Europe, I think it is likely that we will have another attack. We're working, of course, round the clock to prevent that from happening, but this is a very, very serious threat.
The Paris attackers were Europeans, radicalised in Europe, trained in Syria. The number of people who pose a threat to us all is, according to shared European intelligence, huge.
There's at least 5,000, we think, that have been radicalised by ISIS, very often online, and have acquired conflict experience in Syria and Iraq. Many of them have since returned. Now, there are groups of these extremists that are meeting in Europe and of course in Syria at locations that we can't disclose.
But the threat is increasing. Would you agree with that?
It's certainly the highest terrorist threat we've faced for over 10 years, and we need to up our game as a collective counter-terrorist community to make sure that we can protect our citizens from this.
The trail from the Paris attacks led to terror cells in Belgium. It exposed intelligence failings and highlighted gaps in European intelligence sharing. Europol should have plugged those gaps. Mr. Wainwright, a former MI5 officer, says the organisation's cooperation with over 600 law enforcement agencies across the continent is now better than ever. But if Britain was to leave the EU, he says it would be disadvantaged and exposed.
I think it gives rise to significant security challenges, at least in the short term. And I'm not certain what those alternative arrangements could be. And indeed, if there were arrangements out there that were better than those that the UK is currently choosing to engage in the EU, I assume they would have taken them already. So one can expect that the arrangements will be not as optimal, and therefore it will be difficult, I think, for the UK to replace what it currently relies on in the EU with arrangements that would be as effective and as cost efficient as well.
The terror threat is evolving fast, he says, often shaped in the shadows of cyberspace and global in its reach. Mark Stone, Sky News, in The Hague.